But at some point, as I sat there and I kind of composed myself, switch just flipped in my brain and was like, you are not going to be this man that doesn't provide. You're not going to be the man that is average. You're going to be the person that makes a difference for your family. And then after that, I was just a man possessed.
Welcome to Entree Real Estate, where we turn the complexities of real estate into clear, actionable steps for building generational wealth. I've invested into different types of real estate all over the United States, and I run a thriving real estate fund. Join me as we document the entrepreneurial journey of scaling businesses and transforming the lives of tens of thousands of people around the world. Let's turn your real estate dreams into reality. Buckle up, because this is the start of something truly incredible. My name is Devin Robinson, and welcome to Entree Real Estate.
What's up, and welcome to another episode of Entree Real Estate Podcast. Today, I am so excited because I get to introduce, honestly, a guy that I really look up to a ton in our industry as a professional, as a real estate investor, also as a man, as a father, and as a husband. It's just really cool to have people in our industry that transcend just the real estate aspect, that you can build relationships with and then also just be really, really encouraged by, that push you to be a better version of you. And so I met Michael at Collective Genius in our mastermind, was blown away by his generosity. I actually feel like I was one of our room was the first to hear kind of the foreclosure talk. And even a little bit, Michael, I was like, dang, you deserve first place because you took first place for me. And I had it most of the day, and I was like, I'm about to win this. And then you got up and then gave your talk. But I do equate it to it's like losing in the first round of the playoffs to the guy who won, or the team that won the Super Bowl, because you ended or Super Bowl or World Series, because you ended up being the first person to give a talk on the main stage at CG from like a breakout presentation. So it was like I lost to the guy that won the championship. So that's totally fine with me. And so, but man, I'm just so thankful for you and the amount that you've given to the community, to me personally. I'm just really thankful and really, I'm excited to kind of have you on the podcast today, man. So thanks so much for being here. I'm pumped to dive in today.
Well, that was super kind. Best intro ever there. Happy to be here.
It's because it's well-deserved, man. Well-deserved. Michael, I know it's easy to talk about like hey, tell me what you do and where you're from. But really, honestly, we can talk about that. I do want you to intro that a little bit, but I also would love to speak even just a little bit. I'm going to dive in just because this is just kind of how I am. I'd love to talk a little bit about the way that you've impacted and this is like diving straight in, the way that you've impacted the foreclosure market and helping so many people, I feel like has to play a role on how you've had to continue to be innovative in this niche because it affects your business so much. So sure, we can talk a little bit about you and who you are, but I'd love to dive in for you. Like, what's the mindset like for you to be constantly in a state of innovation because you give so freely? Does that make sense?
Well, it's actually, there's some mixed views on that on my team, because I have a very abundant personality. It's just who I am. There's so many deals out there that I would prefer to just give away and it'll eventually come back to me. But I have shared a lot on social media. And at first, my audience was mostly just in Kansas City, and it's expanded nationwide now. But yeah, you're going to have competition that sees exactly what you're doing. And I haven't really held back. I've shared what my, scripts are, what my marketing is, cadences of marketing, pretty much anything I've shared, and people have listened, and they do. So for a while, we noticed, hey, this is getting a little bit more challenging in our market. So it forced us to be a little bit more valuable. So we think about every interaction we have in terms of a conversation or a text or a direct mail piece or anything, and we've forced ourselves to put more value into those pieces. So maybe there's a link to our Google reviews. Perhaps there's a link to a Calendly where we can have a virtual meeting. Perhaps there's a link to an explainer video that's 8 or 10 minutes long that explains all their different options. Just trying to provide a little bit more value in each interaction, as opposed to, hey, we're trying to buy your house cash like pretty much everyone else. So just trying to differentiate ourselves a little bit more. But yeah, every single day I have to get a little bit better, because there are some young guns in our market that they're pretty good. So props to them. They keep me sharp.
I'm sure, man. And just to kind of rewind a little bit. So, Michael, you specialize in you're creating in the process, which is really cool. You're creating a process in which you target, market, and serve this niche list, this niche demographic of real estate. I'd love for you to explain even just what that means. I talk about the niches because I'm saying the riches are in the niches, right? Like if you niche down, it becomes a lot more effective for you. But I'd love to hear kind of what niche even in real estate entails and why you feel so strongly about serving that niche demographic within real estate.
So for a long time, I was a lone wolf, and I did not have a support team. I didn't have a team of any kind. It was just me. And I only had a certain amount of hours a day, so you had to use those hours very productively. So, of course, we all know the term direct to seller, right? We're sending out our marketing. We're hoping that they respond. Extremely effective. I love direct to seller, but I had to think of one layer deeper. So I started analyzing, well, what's the direct to motivation? That's really what we're trying to find. When you think about a direct mail campaign, you send out 100 pieces, maybe you get half a person to respond, right? And then maybe only 1 out of 10 of those people want to sell. So you're trying to find a needle in a haystack, right? So I started thinking, well, I would prefer to find hay in a haystack and make it just a lot easier. So I started thinking about what are the most motivated subgroups. So you have pre-foreclosures, to where they have a problem and they have a timeline. They have to do something. That made sense to me. If you had divorce situation, I hate to see it, but a lot of times those yield motivation. Perhaps water shut off, perhaps electric shut off, perhaps code violations. What are all the things that are actually the most motivated seller? And instead of just, marketing to everyone at a broad approach and hoping for that 1% to respond, why would I not just go directly to the people that really need me most? And the reason that I go to these folks is not just because it makes sense by the numbers, because I'm a math guy, but back in 2014 when I was a teacher, we were barely scraping by financially. I had to work really hard for my 40 grand a year, and we were very frugal, but I was losing money every month. And we got to the point where our next payment, we were not going to be able to make it on our home. So we were in that foreclosure mode, like, what are we going to do? And I would have loved if someone like me, with my approach and compassion and empathy, would have come beside me and been like, look, these are your options. I'm not here to take your home. Of course, I want to make money. I'm an investor, but let's walk through this as partners and figure it out. Unfortunately, I had some friends that bailed me out and got us a little bit of money to get by. But there's that piece of me that's like, I experienced that. I don't want anyone else to feel that way. So trying to help as many homeowners as I can to know all their options and get out of that bad situation they're in.
Oh, I love that story because it's almost like it's the origin story for who you are and what you've become. And I think also out of that cultivates a desire to serve other people and not for them not to experience it, or if they are experiencing it, for them to know they're not alone. For you, I know a big part of what you do and who you are is your faith. Always encouraged, and it's cool because a lot of people have probably slid into your DMs and told you about how they're encouraged of the things you share in the morning about what you're studying in the Word or what God is teaching you or the way that you're preparing for your day and serving in the way that you do and the things that you do through the lens of the gospel and what has been done for you. And so in a lot of those ways, I'd love to hear even just like how important early on for you was your faith in establishing yes, there is a kind of direction you want to hold, but even just like the convictions of the niche that you serve, the way you serve it and how you want to do it ethically. Because for me and my wife, I remember we would write checks for our rent and go, because I was a college pastor and then I also was a teacher. And it was like, we would write checks and be like, this check will bounce.
Mm-hmm.
We was like, we'll trust God in this moment. And so, and in this season of our life, and praise the Lord, he did that. But then for you to, it's really easy when you get over the hump, right? Like it's easy to pray for God when you're in the valley, but when you're not, like to continue to trust in God and continue to pray and celebrate in the gift, the good gift that he's given you. And so for you, how do you make sure, even in your company, as you continue to become more successful, become served, and then become like have more of a platform, how do you continue to make sure that you are still honoring the Lord in how you run your business and the things that you pursue and all of that? I'd love to just hear like go that route a little bit.
Well, there's always a checks and balances with that. I mean, I'm a human being. I sometimes revert to living in the flesh more than I would like, but that's real life. But every morning, every single morning, I start in the Word. It may not be as much as I would like, just because my little ones will wake up, but I ground myself in the Word, and that puts me in the right frame of mind to start the day. I pray for opportunity to serve people every morning. So sometimes people ask me, like, how can you possibly get this many good opportunities? Is it just luck? What is it? And a lot of it's a lot of preparation and but a lot of it is I flat out pray for the Lord to not necessarily lead me to an opportunity where I can make money, but it's like, just please lead me to the person that I can serve the most today. And amazing amount of the time, I just get clarity on what I'm supposed to do, or someone reaches out, and it's just the Holy Spirit works. I'm just a normal dude, but the Lord can use normal people to do pretty extraordinary things.
That is the truth.
It's just the foundation of my company. I mean, our company is called East West Properties. The Lord's hands reach from east to west. That's where that came from. My mother actually came up with that name, and it's stuck. And so it's just the foundation of who we are.
I love that. I love that, and I'm thankful for you even sharing that, and that you do serve and love your people that way. You'd mentioned and you talked a little bit about in the morning you do this. Do you have like a morning routine? And I know morning routines are people have mixed feelings and reviews about morning routines. I'm a big morning routine person. I'm also a big Rob Dyrdek guy, and Rob Dyrdek is all about like...
That guy's brilliant. He's brilliant.
Oh, right? And so like the way he optimizes his life is just incredible. I love it. And so I didn't know like how much of your, because it seems like you're fairly disciplined in your morning routine. And so what is yours like? Do you feel like that affects your day? And if it's grounded in the Word, I would imagine it does affect your day. But also, like, how important is that to you?
So generally, a normal routine for me would get up right around 5:30 or 6, depending on the day, and get up, brew some coffee, drink that while I'm reading the Word. And then after that, I would read some type of self-help book. Might be business, might be confidence, might be leadership, whatever it might be. Go over some of my short-term and long-term goals, and just kind of sit and think about what the highest leverage tasks would be. After that, I try to get out and move my body some. Might lift some weights or go run a bit. But after that, I'll get home and spend a little time with my kids. By that time, they'll be awake, and see them for a minute, and then head into the office. And that's been a winning formula for me.
Nice. Very cool. I know there's a lot of different things people do during a morning routine. I don't know if you ever tried, but I actually might do. So Rob has that like pod that he sits in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I looked one up in Charlotte, and I think I'm going to try it. It's like a salt pod.
Yeah.
They literally put 1,000 pounds of Epsom salt in this thing.
Right.
It is it's like you're in a zero gravity pod of just
like a sensory deprivation thing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like sensory deprivation, and it's like, for me, if you know me, I'm like, I need it. I need it. So I'm very interested to try it because, like, I think it could be really cool. Have you ever done anything like that?
I have not. Actually, I've tried all the meditation and different stuff. My mind is beep, 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 and I really struggle. So maybe I need something like that.
That's what I'm thinking. Like, I'm thinking, like, I think I need to force, like, sensory deprivation because, like, I know that I need it. I know that I need, like, some sense of stillness in my life. Like, just, like, biblically, like, be still. Just having some sort of stillness before the Lord, stillness in that moment in time. But I also know that, like, my brain probably just needs that time of just stillness and not censored from my phone, from whatever, because it's impossible for me to. I've tried prayer closets. I tried all. Yeah, it's like it's impossible. I can't do it. So, I don't know. I'm gonna try it. I'll let you know how it goes.
All right.
I think it's gonna be interesting. But they have them here in Charlotte. I'm sure they have them out there. Now you're in Kansas City, and Kansas City is a pretty good market for rentals, stuff like that. So for you, do you see a lot of what you do? Are you holding properties? Are you flipping them? Are you renovate? Like, what's your strategy for a lot of these properties? Because you're doing a good amount of creative finance with them. So I'd imagine you're keeping them, but do you sell them on wraps? And we can talk about all of that stuff. But I'd love to know in that market specifically, which seems almost like a mid-major market, what would be the go-to strategy that you have out there?
You know, I think that's on a person-by-person basis. For me, I focus more on, active cash generation, and then I cherry pick the best of the best to keep. I'm young. I don't feel the need to have just a giant portfolio. $200 a month on cash flow doesn't excite me. It's more the tax benefits that excite me. So we have about 30 rentals right now, and really my biggest expense is my taxes. So I use those as a vehicle to beat Uncle Sam's number down. And that's really the only benefit I see to rentals at this point. Obviously, if you hold a rental for 30 years and you cash out, or maybe even 10 or 15 years, massive cash windfall there. But I'm more of a short-term gratification guy. So I like to wholesale, and then use that cash to grow our company. But I think that question's kind of loaded. It really depends on what you want for your life. Right now, I have a very long time horizon in real estate. So it's not just hey, I want $10,000 passive and then I'm out and on a beach somewhere. I'm not retiring. That's not how I operate. So I'm in it for the long haul, and eventually, if I can, get my income enough, maybe I'll put it into, large multifamily or something and diversify. But right now, I'm just trying to make my active cash generation machine work really well, and that's what I've been focusing on for a while.
Nice. I'm curious too. So you talked about, and I think this is important because, like, a lot of people, they run this race of building out all these rental portfolios, or they build out this rental portfolio and then realize they don't have the cash they need to be able to operate their business. But then also we hear at CG where people go, I have one regret in my business over the last 10 years. I didn't hold more properties, And so there's that tension between the two of having, do you cash flow? Because I see you do a lot of wholesale and hotel on it, which is great. And then you do a lot of, but then you do get to keep some of the creative stuff. So is it mostly the things that you spend your cash on would be your creative finance things that have lower barrier to entry, and then you wholesale anything else that probably not going to be a good creative option?
Well, it's definitely something to consider on the cash flow front in terms of how your business operates. So just imagine you have 20 or 30 rentals, right? Last year we acquired that many, subject to, and they were good deals, but you don't think about, wow, I didn't get private money for when a roof fails, or when an HVAC goes down, or there's a plumbing issue, or whatever the things are. And it's like, when you have that many, it ends up being a lot of money, and that's like, well, where is that money coming from? So then you have to pull it from your reserves. So be very careful on the front end, when you start taking these properties down, factor in for more problems than you think. Because we've run into a season like that recently, to where we're making a lot of money in the company, but then you keep having to pour money into stuff like that, and it puts you in a situation to where you can be vulnerable. So definitely be, a little bit more cautious, especially with how the market is right now.
That is good, because, you're right. Like, interest rates are eating away at building repair reserves. Like, you can't build repair reserves with a mortgage being as high it is at times. And so it really does cut away of because when you build a rental portfolio, that's probably one of the first things that go is your savings for repairs. If you have to kind of jeopardize anything. And so, no, that's tough. That's good. I appreciate that. That's good. I have a question. I guess there's two questions. One of them is, it seems like when you deal with foreclosures, and this is a thing that also probably separates you from a lot of the other people in your market. When you have a lot of competition, there are just some people that can't do it because they don't have the capital to take it there. Mm-hmm. They don't have the capital and they don't have that timeline. So it's for you. Are you pulling money from a lot of the reserves that you have to purchase the properties or put the down payments on, or have you had just a bunch of good relationships with private lenders, or what is I guess that side of the company look like for you? Because honestly, the process of taking down foreclosures can be fairly capital extensive.
It is. So we have probably 4 or 5 main private money lenders. These are folks that are family and friends, or we've met them at church, just different people like that. And we have these relationships to where basically if a foreclosure sale is tomorrow or the next day, we can send over basic information and they're getting the money over to us right away. Of course, you're filling out a deed of trust and all those things that protect their money. But these relationships are developed in a way to where there's trust, and they're not, making me jump through 80 hoops to get money. It's basically I can have it within the hour. But if you don't have that luxury, you're not going to at the very beginning. So you need to develop relationships with guys like me or guys like Devin in your market, who can get access to the money, and then you can partner on the deal. Having 50% of a watermelon is better than having all of a grape. So
that's right. I like that one. I've never heard of all of a grape. I would have just said having actually none of a.
There's that as well. No watermelon.
I like having all of a grape. We'll go with that one, or a raisin. So I like talking about raising capital because I think it's just such a, really it's what separates. I think that wholesaling is not actually like real estate investing, because you're just flipping a contract. You're not putting any money down.
Right.
And so I think that being able to raise capital is what separates wholesalers from investors. Or it doesn't, I don't think it separates. I think it just is an introduction to actual investing. For you, how did you go about raising those capitals from those 4 people? Was it just like, hey, were it people that you even knew had money and then you approached them? Or was it just conversations you were having about what you were doing and then people became interested? I'd love to hear what that was like for even people that are wanting to learn how to raise capital.
So every single one of my private money lenders, I knew them, but I didn't necessarily know if they had money. There were a couple of them that I very much knew had money, but there were a couple of them that I was actually very surprised that they had some money socked away. But every single one of those relationships was there, but the business relationship was created through all of my posting on social media. So they would see, me doing deal after deal after deal after deal, and they would finally, they came to me and said, hey, look, I see you're doing all these deals. I'm kind of interested in learning more. And then you'd set up a meeting and you'd figure out, how much capital they have. And I'd kind of share what a transaction with us looks like and what they could expect to get in terms of return. And you just develop those relationships pretty naturally. But something to remember, do not underestimate how many people have, $200,000, $300,000, $500,000 sitting around. And they have it sitting in their their normal checking account earning nothing. And hey, if they can make 8, 10, 12% or whatever it is with you, they're going to be thrilled, especially when it's backed by real estate. So don't underestimate yourself. Have these conversations. If people don't know you're doing what you're doing, it's going to be tough to get money flowing through the company. But that was my experience, is just to share daily life. And automatically people are looking for returns if the stock market's terrible or they're not getting good return through their bank account or whatever. And they're just like, this might be good. And people just see you doing deals and they reach out.
Yeah. Have you noticed an influx now that you've leveled up? And we may transition into this. You've clearly leveled up your social media game, the platform, your opportunity, your exposure. Have you noticed more of an influx of people interested in investing in you or with you on some of these since doing that?
I probably could. I haven't asked for it. But yeah, if I put an opportunity out there to invest, I imagine that I could have several really good conversations.
I bet you would. I remember probably like a month or two ago, you were like, hey, I'm out of capital. Anybody want to join? And I'm sure it probably didn't take a whole lot for somebody to jump right back on there and be like, yeah, I've got some, let's move it.
Yeah. So that's just an ongoing battle with any investor. Doesn't matter if you're a newbie or you're doing 1,000 deals a year. It's just an ongoing battle with cash. Because you have this fine line. I have these investors that back me with about $5 million worth of money. So it's like, if I'm not using all of it, they're like, hey, use my money. But then if you spend more than theirs, you have to bring on new investors. But it's this ongoing balancing act of trying to use everyone's money. So it's interesting.
Yeah, and it's crazy. It's crazy how much money is out there. So I've started to fund, and it's just like, it's crazy how much money is actually out there once you start putting it out there, which is cool. A lot of people that you had no idea would have money, and they're looking for returns. And
Yeah.
It's a really cool thing once you start talking about what you're doing, the interest that comes about, and the opportunity to serve those people well. Like I call it, when I talk to investors, I'm like, honestly, it's a win-win-win, right? So like, we get to build a portfolio. We get to help people escape foreclosure and help them in some of the hardest parts of their life. And then you get returns on your money. Really, it's a win-win-win. And so people love that because they also, I'd love to hear this for you. How much of what you do and how you do it, like with the philosophy in which you do it and the way that you serve and love other people, play into why those people invest with you. Sure, they like you. Sure, they know you from church or from other places. But how many of them are just like, I love what you're doing?
My main investor, they're very, very wealthy, and they made it clear up front that they have tons of opportunities to invest their money with other people, but their main focus is things that make a difference and that they really resonate with. So yeah, it's very important to have your mission be a part of your business. Other people align with that, and you'll attract the people that are interested in what you're doing, and that just makes your business easier.
Yeah,
when people align.
And that's the whole like, there's a couple things. I love Maya Angelou where she says, people will forget what you do, they'll forget what you say, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And if you can make somebody, and so one of my tags for our fund is experiential investing. If you can make somebody feel something while investing with you, they feel like they're a part of what you're doing, they feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves, then it really will impact the people that then who are on the mission with you, and the way that they invest with you, and the way they even, honestly, the way they even trust you with their money. I'm very surprised with how much they just trust me with their money because they're behind the mission and the values and the vision of what we have. And so don't just post, like, for people listening, don't just post, hey, we flipping this house. Tell the story behind the house that you're flipping. Like, tell the people that you helped in the situation they were in, because that's really what's going to, I'm not going to say you do that for the sake of getting the money, but that's really what's going to attract people to what you're doing. You find that, I mean, that's probably the whole social media following that you have. And the reason why people follow you is to achieve that.
Yeah, I mean, most of the people that I connect with, when they start following me, they might message me and just be like, I really resonated with the way you did this, or the way you presented this, the way you treated this person. And that's the type of people that I want to have following me, or people that love other people and want to serve them, that are believers, that are like-minded. It just makes it a lot more fun that way.
Heck yeah. Now, I think this ties in like really well with something you said earlier, where you talked about your story. You started it off with talking about how you struggled. You and your family and your wife, while you were teaching, struggled. And then you love and serve people out of that empathy and that compassion in the way that you share your, you script and you pitch. How much of this, of serving a niche audience, do you think requires like a high level of EQ, like a high level of emotional intelligence and empathy? Because I really do think not everybody can serve this niche really well. And so how much of that do you think is necessary?
I think it's big. I mean, it's interesting. I've talked to a bunch of different investors that serve this kind of group of people, and a lot of them have come from the teaching background, oddly enough. So they worked with students to where they were going through difficult things in their life, and you had to have compassion, and they didn't have their best day, and they would take it out on you, but you just had to be there and keep giving and giving. So that's, I think, what partially served me. But yeah, I see a lot of people that bounce in and out of serving that group of people because they're only in it for themselves. And they're just like, I can give you a cash offer, and they don't care about the person behind it. And can you make money that way? Of course. But are you going to have long-term sustained success? It might be more difficult, because I don't know how many doors I've knocked or cold calls I've made to where I'm just being myself, but the seller will just say, look, there's been a lot of people that have called me and texted me, you're different. There's an energy about you that's different. I'm just like, I'm just being me. And they're like, I don't know, you're genuine. I really feel like you're here for me. So they can feel it, and they know it. So one of the biggest rules for me, and I try to tell this to my acquisition guys too, when you are approaching these people, you have to divorce your desire from what the seller wants. Of course, when I go up there, do I want to make money? No doubt. But when I go up there, I'm not thinking about that. I'm only thinking about serving. And if I serve at a high enough level, the money will come. So that's how I try to base everything. I also don't limit the amount of money that I want to make. I want to make a lot. But you have to approach it with a servant's heart. I mean, to me, at this point, the emotional income of serving these people, when they give you a hug at the closing table, or they leave a good Google review, or they're just truly thrilled or at peace with things, that's every bit as good as the money, if not better.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I really love about you, man. I can see that, and I love that that's the way you serve. That's the way that you serve your community, but that's also the way you serve the potential clients that you have. And I would imagine that's how you serve your staff and other people around you. You get probably DM'd by a ton of people. Is it hard for you to like serve the people that clearly don't fall in alignment with that philosophy? Like, I guess this is a little bit more like on the personal side. Sometimes it's really easy when people are just out for themselves and their own money for this. But you've put out this mission and this vision to be able to help and serve people to learn this industry. But sometimes it's probably pretty exhausting when you have a ton of people coming at you, and sometimes you just don't want to serve them. And especially if their attitude isn't what you would honestly think is necessary to serve this niche. Like, what's it like for you right now in the grind of building this community and trying to serve a ton of people in that context?
It can be a little much sometimes. I'm a very introverted person. I can do extremely extroverted things, but like you talked about when I went and spoke at CG, I enjoyed that in the moment, but then I had to go take a long nap after it. So I love serving, but the amount of people that reach out and I'm trying to help at any given time, it's a lot. But I try to give myself the best of myself to everyone. Is it perhaps a little bit easier to work with people that have the same mindset in terms of serving these people? It is. But that doesn't mean I limit myself to just those people. Because I see this as my mission ground too. And it's like when I'm out there at a seller's appointment, the amount of times I've shared Jesus is significant. And it's more than anywhere else in my life. That's my mission ground. And if I can slowly change the minds of how investors think to where the national perception, this is one of my big goals, is to change the perception of how the average American thinks about real estate investors. Because what do they think? That you're a greasy car salesman, you're a lowballer, you're a shark, whatever they call you. But what if there was a community of people that truly served and truly cared, and instead of people thinking that way, they start thinking, you know what? Those are a pretty good group of people. They want to make money, but they served my family member at a high level. I appreciate what they do. And if you could change the perception to that would be big.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think, what I love about that is that you have a bigger vision as to why you're doing even the community. So a lot of people, they'll say, I want to build a community to sell a course. I want to build a community so that people buy this or whatever for me. And that only takes you as far as you failing to sell a course, right? Like the course sales don't go well. But for you, if your desire, and it sounds like your long-term vision of it, is to transform the way that people view real estate investors in general, is part of that. Do you feel like that's what's going to propel you towards doing the hard things like your YouTube channel and the community and doing it well?
My purpose on the planet is to serve and get the most out of myself for my Creator. He's blessed me with a certain amount of talents, and I'm not going to squander it. But there are days where it's a challenge, and I don't want to do it. But so part of it's changing the perception. Part of it is, making my Creator known. But part of it is it makes me physically ill when people hate their job and they just sit in there year after year and they don't get ahead financially, because I've known that pain. I sat in my teacher's job and I woke up every Monday morning not wanting to go to school and hating what I did and just looking forward to the summers and then dreading the fall when I had to go back. It makes me ill when I think about people wasting their life that way. And do you have to love real estate and do it at the level that I do? No. But if you could teach people to do maybe a deal a quarter, a couple deals a year, to where they can transform their life, give themselves a little bit of margin, to where they can then focus more on their purpose instead of just worrying about money and the everyday grind of paying for bills. If you can get some margin, that's where your mind starts being creative on how you can expound on your purpose. So that's probably the biggest part of it, is really unlocking Pandora's box for people and realizing that there's more.
So the purpose of this podcast, it's called Entree Real Estate, because there's an entrepreneurial journey side of it that is more than just like, I could easily come in here and go, hey, Michael, thanks for being on the show today, man. How much a year are you doing in revenue? How many employees do you have? What does the training look like? But like, this is the real side of being an entrepreneur, of understanding like, look, listen, the deals are only going to take you so far. And then when you have a rough patch, if you don't know why you do what you do or any of that stuff, then you're going to quit. You're going to fail because it doesn't fit an overall purpose of why you're doing what you're doing, which is why I do see this industry being so transient. You'll have people come through it. And even in, especially in like booming markets, there's wholesalers are a dime a dozen. Like, it's easy to wholesale a deal. But when it gets really hard, you see a steep fall off. And you probably, as a seasoned investor, like I did, like Chief of Centers, I started on it 3 years ago, like when everybody started wholesaling. Now I've kept it going because I do have a much bigger why and established that. But you probably saw a giant fall off between all the people 3 years ago that were wholesaling, because you could literally sell paper to anybody. And now for the people who didn't have a deep enough why, to do it. Was that like a big impact for your company? I'm actually very curious, even just as like a seasoned investor, what that like seeing that look like.
Well, you had an anomaly the last couple years with low inventory, the rise of the hedge funds, and how all that worked. You didn't even have to be good at finding discounted real estate. You just had to find someone that was willing to sell sort of at a discount, and then you could peddle it through. And we took advantage of that in a big way. And to be transparent, we probably thought we were a little bit better than we were because of last year, and we took some risks that you normally wouldn't take. So we've had to kind of correct some of those mistakes this year and get back to the basics. But there's a lot of people that fell off because the easy transactions weren't there. But I mean, at the beginning of my real estate career, when I didn't have any padding financially, all I could think about was myself and where my next deal was going to come from. But now, when I approach an appointment or approach a call or a text message, I don't need the money. Do I want to make the money? Without a doubt. But I'm able now, because of that cushion, to approach things completely differently. I don't know what the question was. We can loop back around to it. And
Fantastic question. Fantastic answer. You mentioned, and this is really good, you mentioned you had deals that you probably, if you were being honest, probably shouldn't have been able to do anything with, but were able to. Mm-hmm. And then you went back to the basics. So I would love to hear, what are the basics? So the practical side of this, we've got people who are listening that have been doing wholesaling for a while. And we've got people who are listening who are just getting into wholesaling, have no idea what to do. Even just real estate investing in general, what would be the basics? And I love how much value you give, and you're like, door knock 20 a day, make 100 calls, do this. But like, that is the basics. I'd love to hear a little bit of that. But also, if somebody wants to kind of dive into this, and even you can even share like, what were your basics? Because your basics look different than a new person's basics.
Well, let me go back to when I was struggling to find deals and what I did. So I for the first couple of years of investing, I relied on agents and them bringing me deals. I started in 2015. I didn't even know you could buy an off-market deal. Like, that's how green it was. So understand that you don't have to know much from the start, and you can grow into something significant. You just got to get 1% better a day. But that first couple of years, we were not making much money. That realtor would inflate the ARV. They would deflate the amount of repairs, and I didn't know any better. I just trusted them and bought the deal, and we probably broke even on about 6 flips in a row during that period of time. And there was one flip in particular where I had to make money on this house. Like, there was no other way around it. I had to close, and we had to do well. We were about to make 20 grand on the deal. The deal was closing in 2 days. I got a call from an appraiser while I was working on this other flip, and they said, look, you have it under contract at this. The appraisal is $20,000 less than that. And that's the exact amount we were going to make. And it just broke me. Like, it was completely broken. I went and sat on the side of this house that I was working on because I was still doing all the work. I was tiling, painting, making all the cuts on the trim. I was swinging that hammer, baby. Do not swing the hammer.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you a thing about it.
I'm glad you didn't, but I did that. So I just sat on the side of the house and I just cried, man. Cried for a long, long while because I didn't know how I was going to provide. I had no idea. But at some point, as I sat there and I kind of composed myself, switch just flipped in my brain and was like, you are not going to be this man that doesn't provide. You're not going to be the man that is average. You're going to be the person that makes a difference for your family. And then after that, I was just a man possessed. And immediately after that, I was driving through, actually, poetically, my current neighborhood that I live in, and found a for sale by owner sign, called them up. They set a number on the phone that was like, surely you messed it up, right? And ended up buying that house, flipped it, made about 60 grand. That first year in investing, I only made like $17,000. So I went from $0 in the bank account to $60,000 in the bank account. And that was everything for me. So I'm going the long way here, but realize that investing, it's not probably going to be easy from the beginning. And you may have to have a moment where your back's pushed up against the wall. And that's what it takes for you to really get the most out of yourself. That's what it took for me. But then for years, I kind of was stuck in that 1 to 3 deals a month area and constantly didn't have deals, where I would flip the house, but then I didn't have anything else, and I was unemployed basically after that. And I was sitting on my back deck at our house and was kind of pouting a little bit, I guess, because I didn't have much going on. And my wife came out on the deck and she was like, "It's the middle of the day. What are you doing? Go work." So that's right. She got me in line. But I looked on my phone, and there was on Zillow, and there was a little red dot that said auction next to it. And this house was about a half mile from our back deck. So I didn't know how to talk to these people. I didn't know what the situation was. Had no understanding. All I knew was, I'm going to go take some action and figure it out. So I walked to the house. I knocked on the door. It was probably the most awkward interaction known to man. But I went and did it and said, "Hey, my name's Michael. I noticed your lender has a foreclosure sale in a couple weeks. I just wanted to come by to see how I could help." And it's funny how the first things that came out of my mouth is almost identical to what I say now. But they let me in. We had an amazing conversation. And at the end of it, they were like, "Look, we'll think about it. We'll call you back." So I was like, you know what? That was a pipe dream, and they're not going to call me back, but they did. They called me back. I signed the contract the next day, and I signed it for 50 grand. And that was the very beginning of what this is back here, because I realized that I had nothing going at all. No leads, no deals, no sign of anything. And I went to motivation, and I knocked one door and made $50,000. So you'd think that I would have kept doing that, but I didn't. I went back to the driving for dollars and the stuff like that, and it reliably gave me maybe one deal. But then I actually rented an office in the current building that I'm sitting in, had no leads, no deals, no nothing. I looked on my phone, pulled up Zillow. There was a house probably 10 miles from me. I was like, that one looks vacant on the picture. It had like the sticker from a lender or something on the door. I drove out there. It was vacant. And I was like, well, what do I do now? Last time I knocked on the door and someone was there. What do I do? So I looked them up on the tax records. They had another record with a utility close to my office. So I was like, maybe they're renting over there. So I went to the house. I knocked on the door. I said, "Hey, I saw your house was vacant. You have a foreclosure sale in a couple of weeks. Anything I can do to help?" And they said, "Yeah, we were actually on vacation, and we came back, and these people had moved into our house. So we couldn't live there anymore. So we found a rental." Crazy. So these people just took over their house. Well, they turned off all the utilities and all that, and it was the middle of winter, so these people finally left. But they couldn't bring themselves to mess with it. So I went down there. They said, "This is what we want for the house." I was able to put it under contract. I assigned it for $45,000. And I said, "Hold up." we knocked 2 doors. We made almost $100,000. What is this? So that's when I started thinking about it. So that was a very long answer to, if you're wanting to get started in real estate, find motivation, go to them, figure out what their problem is, solve the problem, get paid.
Hey. And that's it. I guess before we kind of sign off, I'd love to hear one more. So clearly you've gotten 1% better in a bunch of different areas in your business. When it comes to the door knocking aspect, there can be a lot of time wasted because they're so spread out. It's not like you're just knocking doors in one neighborhood. They're so spread out. How have you refined the system? Because what it sounds like is you got to do the work to make the money. The hardest work in this, or the most uncomfortable work in this, is the door knocking aspect, which is probably the aspect people do the least in this. What is the 1% better of even like that process that you've created to door knocking? So you're probably not knocking every door that comes on the list. Are you cleaning it and checking equity, then putting it in a map to do that so that you know that if you knock this door and they answer, it's not a waste of time because they don't have equity?
So
Go ahead.
Devin's talking about ninja level skills, right? We're talking about perfectly refined lists, technology built around it. People that are listening to this, listen. I made millions of dollars from looking on Zillow, writing down an address on a piece of paper, having the paper sit in my passenger seat, and drive to the houses. Do not worry about if it's a waste of time. Do not worry about if your list is perfect. Take the action to go knock the door, make the call, make the text, the Facebook message, and you get better by doing that. I've talked about this before. If you're new, perhaps it might take 100 doors to get a deal. My story is a little bit misleading. I knocked 2 and I made $100,000, but I think the Lord was just speaking to me like, do that thing, man. But it's not going to be like that for everyone. So think about it. If you knock 100 doors, you get one deal, you make $25,000 on it. That's $250 a door every time you knock the door. So don't think of it as a waste of time. Think of it, hey, I went to this house, I knocked it, I had a conversation, I learned, and I made $250 doing it. That's pretty cool. So it's just a frame to where you can, change how you think about it instead of it being a waste of time. But we could talk a long time about systems and how to improve lists and how to make sure things are perfect and have scoring based on equity and vacancy and all these things. But don't let that get in the way of taking action.
Fantastic answer. I wanted to even pause because not say anything to interrupt because that's a good TikTok right there. So that's a good piece of content because that is the truth. And I think so many times we get into our own head, we talk ourselves out of making money. And we talk ourselves out because we think there's no way or whatever, or we get too nervous, or we think there has to be some sort of elaborate SOP built out for it in order for it to actually function and work well. And it's not the case. Just done is better than perfect. Just go do it. I guess another question, you talked about we've exclusively talked about foreclosure almost, but you don't just do foreclosures. You're in different niches, but you're not door knocking these different niches. And so what does it look like for you and your company? We are going to get a little bit more of the practical side of things, but for you to reach out to these other ones, are you cold calling and texting? Or are you doing anything like that, especially with different regulations? Has that shifted in your company? What does that look like as far as the other niche list that you go after?
So we actually are door knocking other niches as well. Nice. Do not underestimate the power of some of these. So I've shared a ton about foreclosures. That's my baby, just because it was something that impacted me, and it was how I got into it. So I just love it. But there are others that are perhaps easier. Perhaps the clients are easier. Perhaps they're just as lucrative. We love probates. Probates are phenomenal.
I have a probate attorney that you guys work with that kind of helps you through that process. So are you paying for them to finish probate, or do you mostly open the estate, help them to open the estate so that they could sell the property, or are you kind of helping to guide them through that whole entire process?
So it's interesting. A lot of the folks that we're reaching out to with probate, they have perhaps opened the estate, but maybe they didn't have the money to pay for it, so it didn't wrap up. or perhaps we're getting referrals from probate attorneys, which highly underrated list is going and talking to attorneys and saying, hey, look, I have a probate solutions company. If you need if you have a client that needs the locks on their house changed, a car moved, a pool drained, whatever it is that's annoying to you as an attorney and you don't want to deal with, I'm your guy. And they're like, what? And they want to talk to you more about it. And we've started getting referrals from probate attorneys that way. And once they refer you up, I mean, it's cake at that point. But no, you can go down the path of niche lists forever. I mean, there's divorce, eviction, power of attorney, all these different things that would say motivation, but it's approached the same way. Here's how it's approached. Hey, I'm Michael. I noticed you had this problem. I'm here to help. And it's the same thing. I mean, they're all going through a tough time in their life, and all you have to do is identify what the problem is, and if they're open to working with you, solve that problem, and you get paid to do so.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So
that's awesome. I love that, man. I love that. I think more than we think, this is a solutions-oriented job. And I'm sure your pitch, people get stuck up on pitches. How are you pitching? How are you crafting your offer? All of those things. I'm sure your craft, or your offer and your pitch are based on two things: high levels of empathy and compassion, and solution, problem solving. And so for you, in how you communicate to sellers, if I'm wrong, correct me, but how are you presenting that empathy and that problem solving solution for them to work with you, I guess? So what is that?
are we talking about in terms of them accepting an offer?
I guess we're talking about just even in the, sure. I guess this could be the offer side of things. People ask, oh, how do you make an offer on a foreclosure when you don't even, honestly, you don't even know what's owed on the house. That's like the freaking worst part of making offers is like, you got no idea what's owed on the house until you get a payoff. You really have no idea. So like, how are you presenting that offer with such ambiguity? And I know it's based off of those things, compassion and empathy and solving problems. And so
I prefer not to give offers. So when I give an offer, that makes me a commodity. Once they have that number, they can just go shop it to anyone else. Now, there are situations where empathy and compassion only get you so far, and people just care about money. So there's sometimes where that doesn't matter as much. But I try to engineer it the opposite way. Instead of saying, well, what do you need for the house to sell it? Whatever it is you say, approach it as, hey, look, we know that we need to sell the house. We know that you either need to buy a new house or find a rental. We need to get all your stuff moved. You got this, and this lien. We need to get from A to B. What do you think it's going to take to get all that done? 30 grand. So if we could get 30 grand in your pocket, that would solve all your problems, get you to the next phase of your life, and get you some room to operate. Yeah, that's all I need. Then find whatever that payoff is or a recent mortgage statement, add that on, and it gets them in a different frame of mind. It's all about, what's the final destination? Let's get us there. How much money does it take? Instead of talking about what the house is worth, people are mentally attached to the house. So if you talk about it that way, the conversation can go a different path. So I just try to reverse engineer it that way a little bit.
that's good. Because they say people, and this is in both ways, people buy with emotion and justify with logic. And so if you can emotionally engage with them on what their needs are, and that will easily justify in their situation, because there's such high motivation, that will easily justify whatever, they can easily justify whatever the number ends up being, because it fits what their needs are in that time, in that season. And so, oh man, that's good. Now we haven't even scratched or talked about artificial intelligence. That's another thing that we both just geek out very highly on. And so maybe that'd be another podcast for another day. I know you have some things in the work potentially that could help, honestly, to scale your business and businesses all around the world dealing with lists in general. And so I think that's cool. I think that's exciting. I don't know if you want to give a little, like, you don't have to give a little teaser, but I know you're working on some stuff that you're passionate about artificial intelligence because it's coming. And so is there anything even small that you want to say on that?
Well, you had mentioned about people getting caught up with the lists and them being accurate. Half the battle with this is having correct information. You know, if we're talking about foreclosures, well, where are they, for one? Are they still active? Did they get solved? All these different things. That's a lot of work for people to do. I have a whole team that does it for me, and they keep it very accurate. But people make mistakes. People call in sick. Whatever it is to makes the data not accurate. So we're looking for ways to refine that whole process in terms of, here's the data you want. You don't have to do anything to get it. I've already scored it for you in terms of which one I think is the best for you to go after in terms of equity, whatever. And that's just one list. Imagine if you did that with a lot of lists, and then you stacked the list, and then I was able to tell you, oh, here's your next best step on what would be your most highly leveraged use of time. Just think about all these things that would make you lethal as a real estate investor. That's what we're working on.
Nice, man. Are you in the phases of where you get to use that yourself?
It's taking, I'm not a tech guy. I geek out over it, but I don't know how to code. I don't know how to do all those things. So you're relying on these third-party sources, and they take a little bit longer than you would like, but I don't know what the timeline is. I'm not good at gauging timelines, but we're working on it.
That's exciting, man. Well, that's cool. Well, I know we're going to have another conversation on here just because there's just so much to talk about, especially with you, and I'm thankful for the way you serve and the way that you serve a community. And it's cool because I think about it, and I'm sure some of your team are like, hey, you're giving away too much. But I think you and I are in the same camp of like, listen, one, the concept and the idea of reciprocity is why we do this. People are going to, you just want to help. You just want to help. You want to serve. And if it comes back. But it will come back because of just the concept of reciprocity. But the second thing is like, honestly, 1%, you're going to say all these things and you're going to teach all these things, and only 1% of the people or the population is going to actually go do it. And that 1%, we're going to do it anyways. And so why not just give and serve out of the abundance of who you are and what you believe and see it transform and help people? And so I'm encouraged by you and thankful for you and the way that you do that. And you push me to be better, and it's really exciting, man. So I'm thankful for you. Good. Is there anything you wanted to leave before we ended that you would love to share? I will ask you, where can people find you, which is going to be your new Facebook group, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all those things, which is awesome. But anything you want to leave the people with before we kind of sign off?
Just don't underestimate the power of taking action. Don't get hung up on all the minutia and all the small stuff. Don't think about having to be perfect before you go do it. Every bit of success I've ever had was seeing something that I thought could be productive and going and working on it before I had any idea what I was doing. When I got started in this, I had no idea it existed until I saw a little red dot that said foreclosure next to it. And I immediately took action with the prompting of my wife, which you need a good partner. But I went over there, had no idea what I was doing, and I made something happen. And it turned into something that I hope will be helpful for many thousands of people. But get out there and take action. Just get out of your own way.
Cool, man. Well, where can people find you, Michael? Where's the best place for them to find you, reach out, learn from you, hopefully one day be able to give back to you, pay you for what you've done and all of these things? I know that's not at the forefront of your mind, but that is the only way people can give back in some of these ways. And so I would love to hear that.
Connect with me on Instagram, Michael_Franke. I hang out there a lot, daily content, and then on Saturdays I have my little thing called, I'm blanking on what it's called. It's goofy, but yeah, Q&A Saturday. There you go. Just needed a prompt. But yeah, any question that you have, just shoot me a DM, and I answer those through stories. And just launched my YouTube channel, and regular videos are going to be coming out. So look me up there, Michael D. Franke, and look forward to making some content for you all.
Heck yeah, man. I'm thankful for you. I appreciate you. I know I probably won't be seeing you at the CG meetings anymore because you're Mr. Premier now, but I'm thankful for that, and I'm excited for you and all that you have in store, man. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a good time.
Yes, sir.